Welcome everyone to this week's installment of Let's Talk Horses. Oh my Lord. And of course, straight away, as soon as I hit record, everyone starts messaging me. My very special guest this week is a first timer on the podcast. And I'm so excited to welcome her. Thank you for joining us, Miss Maya Dayan.
Yay, thank you. I like it because I would title this The First Timer on Horses as well. So that works.
Yeah. And, I've got because, I've kind of, excuse me, I've been around horses. I now work with horses a lot. It's part of my job. It's kind of what I do in the world. And I had this saying where I think non-horse people are sometimes the best horse people, because you see non-horse people's approach to horses from this very unknown space, and they tend to not have a lot of projections and expectations on the horse. With themselves, they probably do, but I love how non-horse people approach horses, because the horses are always like, oh, you're different. Like, what's different in your world? And it's because they literally don't. I think once you become a horse person, you sort of start to have these, well, today we're going to do this, and I know if you do that, it means this, and horse people just have no idea. So they just show up, and the horses, I find a lot is created from it. And maybe we can dive into some of that when we get into this podcast a little bit. But I would like to ask you the first question that I ask all of my guests, which is like, how or when did horses come into your life?
Very, very, very shortly at 12, but I never became a horse person.
So what happened at 12? What was that?
Because I had a school that was like on a very farm town land situation, so you could have like extracurricular with horses, but it was very short-lived, for better or for worse. So then I met them again at 36, 7 in Costa Rica, whenever that was.
Cool. And what made you, because I know a lot of people that have been on my podcast have a story that involves those words, El Lugar, Costa Rica, horses, but it's also so different for each person. Like, what, because was it at so was it at El Lugar, Costa Rica, that it was the first kind of, no. So which of the venue spaces?
Manoa.
Oh yeah, cool. So just for those of you on the podcast, Manoa was the venue we were at before El Lugar sort of was ready to have us, and we were there for many years, right? Like, we would travel there multiple times a year for many years. And so just tell us a little bit about that. Like, what made you go, I'm going to go and get on? Was it that you rode, or what was the ping?
I guess at that stage, I was just like, I'm going to try everything they offer to try. And even I think Susie Gotzi did this 20 minutes of like giving a few tools. And I think that was part of my first time with horses, but having at least like 3 or 4 years of energetic tools, which created a very different thing for me with horses. Like, I remember she said, like, just recall all the lifetimes that you have with horses. And I was like, okay, fine, I'll do that. It was kind of like you say, like, just without any experience or thought, or I'll try this. And she said, pull energy through the horse's body, through you. And okay, let's try this. So it was just like this very simple trial and error, zero confidence. Like, I trusted that we're following the guide and that the horses are super slow and lazy. And I didn't expect to run or do anything with the horse, just stay on it and experience what it could create, kind of thing.
And did you do that? Did you walk and stay on? Were you too?
I mean, I actually even fell off the horse in Manoa, but for me, it was all like this learning experience. Like, okay, so I walked, so I fell, so I did all kinds of things with, like, it wasn't too fast, or there wasn't any serious danger in it, but it was like also this adventure of like, oh, okay, so if you do this, this shows up. If you pull too hard, this shows up. If you, all these little things that you accumulate along the way, which you can only do with trying it with horse. That's also the thing with horses, that you can't like study a book, and which I'm very good at studying a book and controlling everything before I try anything. And you can't really do that with horses. So
yeah, and I think when you do, it never really turns out that well. Trying to replicate things with horses, like everyone that I speak to that, I don't know, that's learned a lot, you've got to find your feel. You've got to find the feel with the horse and the energy of them. But there was something else. Oh, I was going to say, I think we're so blessed that we have the opportunity to, even as like the people that are more like novice rider or new horse people, new horse riders, that get to go to Costa Rica, and especially El Lugar, which is the, eco resort. It's not even really that. It's this phenomenal space that's being created in this part of El Lugar called Cerro Piqui, just north of kind of northwest of the capital, that is being built there, that is really like this bubble of consciousness. Like, I've tried to describe it so many times, like what El Lugar is. I'm like, it's like you step into this world where consciousness prevails. But yeah, like if you have the opportunity to go there and ride, or just in Costa Rica in general, because they don't have points of view about you hurting the horses or doing something wrong. Like, I've ridden in those environments where you go on like a trail ride in like a group, and it's like, you can't do this and you can't do that, and make sure you do this, and make sure they literally just put you on the horse and then they go out and they take care of you. But you've got to have a certain amount of common sense within yourself to not.
it's more like good luck versus
Yeah.
Canada, when you get the helmet and you get the
Yes.
instructions, and like basically it's this energy of like, we don't trust you and you're paying us to ride our horses. And El Lugar is like, here you go.
Yeah. If something goes wrong, we'll deal with it then, which I think is like, that's how we should live life. It's like, I heard a comedian once say, he's like, why do people worry so much about things going wrong? Why don't you just pretend everything's perfect? Well, not even pretend, but just be like, everything's perfect until it's not. And then you just deal with that in the moment. Not like, oh, I'm getting on a horse, this could go wrong, that could go wrong. It's like, get on the horse, and then if something goes wrong, then you deal with it. It's like, and I know like people talk a lot about preparation, but I'm like, I don't know how much preparation you can have in this situation. Awareness is going to trump that to like such a huge degree.
Yeah, that was the last time I was there in September. Cody, who may have been on your podcast, I don't know, but he said
Not
that
yet. Cody, I've been messaging you, and you always, no, we'll get him on eventually. He's a busy man.
So he said like the only way to learn how to canter is to canter, and I was like, oh.
Damn it. My control freak side is like, someone just tell me everything to expect and everything to do. Yeah, and it's like, you want to be a better runner, you want to lift heavier weights, you want to learn another language, you've got to run, you've got to lift weights, you've got to fucking speak the words of the language and practice. It's like, you want to get better with horses, you've got to get on and be willing to possibly fall off, to possibly have things go wrong. It's just one of those things, I think, that the more willing you are to be in the moment with your horse, the more you're going to learn in every single moment that you're with them.
Well, and to add to that, like, since we have all these amazing energetic tools, like everything we learned about being afraid, even of falling off the horse, or like, so many of us have this weird thing about standing behind horses, or just all these weird points of view that whether you've been around horses or not your whole life, you still accumulate them somehow. Like all of that is dealt with in such a swift, different way that I wouldn't find anywhere else in the world. So that's amazing.
Yeah. And that's what I love about horses in general, but especially, these conscious horse, conscious rider classes, and having the combination of access consciousness tools, consciousness, and horses is like all of those points of view we've accumulated, because it could be the same. It could be said the same about everything. Like, you think of the point of views you have about relationships or children or your body, and then you're like, but I've just accumulated that along the way. Like, it's never been this thing where I've cognitively sat down and gone, okay, I think the best way to be with my body is to judge the shit out of it and make it wrong. Like, if we really sat down and processed in a moment and went, okay, if I could have anything with my body, what would it be? I don't think many people would say, I really desire to judge my body and hate it. It would be like, oh, like, I wonder what's possible with actually creating something that is fun and joyful. And so, yeah, I love that. Horses translate to everything. Horses are life. Basically, the lesson of the horse is the lesson of life.
Yeah, and even in the last time, which I was there at a 2-day class, which I've never done before, I was always like writing and experimenting and experiencing. But even in the class, I think I was clearing stuff from that 12-year-old period of like, it was mostly harsh with the social, like with the people and the way they were in the barn. But it was like something has been removed from that experience, even that changed my possibility with writing, that maybe I didn't even remember that it was there, So that was also part of the amazing thing, that we use the tools while we're riding the horses, or playing before we ride the horses.
Yeah. And you spoke about when you were with the Susie in the intro, pulling energy and question. Is there any other tools that, like, just because I think a lot of people that listen to this podcast know a bit about access, but also, like, are there tools that you used with horses that also you use in your life, like, that are really this cool, different way to be with everything?
I think I'm just getting there now. Like, what was cool for me last time I was at El Lugar, it's almost like it switched from just sitting there and, I'm this tourist visitor sitting on the horse, and which is fine, because again, I was new and we all experienced things the way we experiencing them. But it was like I moved from choosing on a horse and versus sort of allowing the horse to choose for me in a way, or didn't even know I'm like the leader of the situation kind of thing. So that also changed probably a lot through the class. But yeah, there's also this sense of like, it's this big creature and who am I to do anything really, but also that's a point of view that I didn't even know that was there, kind of thing. And just learning something totally different about leading on a horse or being in question while riding on a horse, that completely changed it the last time that I was at El Lugar. So
yeah. And I love that, because I remember Dane in one of the classes. I also love how much horses are coming up in access classes at the moment. Like, I was just on another call then with that Gary, Dane and Simone do every month, called Creative Edge of Consciousness. And I don't even remember how it came up, but the subject of horses, and like how much it's becoming part of like the facilitation for change. And in a class recently, horses came up and Dane was saying something like, ride your horse like you ride your life. Like, it's kind of like this crossover or conjunction of horse, you ride your horse like you ride your life. And just what you were saying then, it's like, how many of us are a passenger in this life? Like, we're kind of sitting on life going, okay, where do you want to take me next? Like, what's coming up next in this roller coaster of my life? And, you can sit on your horse and do the same thing, and you might have an all right ride. Your horse will take you places and you'll be up there and doing certain things. But then it's like, when you're willing to take the reins and make those choices, then you stop being the passenger and it becomes this like actual dance and this communion between you and your horse, which is very much like that same energy with you and your life.
yeah. And the other thing with, the tools and your life, like I noticed that at some point I was looking at it like when we're in a room in a Symphony of Possibilities class, because we each do a session on a certain person, but we're all working in the room together. And a lot of times you may get lost in someone else's dance. So I was like, okay, like I'm dancing with all these people, but like I was in question a lot of like, how do I just be in the dance with this amazing horse named Seven Leagues at the moment. Like, so that was very cool.
Yeah. Awesome. And can you talk a little bit more about the leadership thing that you touched on? Like, is there a specific thing you can think of that horses or riding or the classes have shown you about what that true kind of leadership energy is?
Wow. Wow. Yeah, it's really that passive approach to life versus that active choice every few seconds, minutes, whatever that is. Like, on one hand, things come to us and we get to, but even, if the horse does something, I get to either like react or freak out, or I get to be like, no, okay, or you're not doing this right now. Or a lot of times I did want my horse to go faster and I didn't even know how to get him to do it in a way. And I noticed how many times I'm having that conversation with the guides that are supporting us, but who was creating that, or like what was I not choosing that was creating that. And it was very different this time, but it was like being willing, first of all, to see what you're choosing, which is part of the way that ride can facilitate you, and also making new choices.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so cool. And there was something you said there with that energy of like knowing what you want and then kind of like figuring out how you go about asking for it as well. Like that's also part of the facilitation, because you're on this horse and you're like, I want to go faster, but I don't really know how to ask you to go faster, or there's like this uncertainty in my world. And so the horse is like, okay, you're uncertain about something. So it's like, and then you're like trying to have this conversation with them, which is so much like our lives as well. When we have the clarity of our ask and we're willing to even be a little bit into the realm of demand, when we find that it actually creates so much more ease for everyone around us, where we think, I think at one point earlier on, you said, I'm on this horse, this big animal, like, who am I to tell it what to do? Like, there's this energy where it's like, I don't want to impose on this animal that I should be the boss of it, or that it should listen to me in any way. Like, who am I to be the leader in this situation? But it's actually what the horse really desires. Like, there's such a desire in their world to have someone's, or something, other horses, people around them that are clear and direct in their ask. Like you see their whole world. And whether that's something where, I don't know, you're showing them like a certain behavior of theirs is actually not really going to work out well. It's not always about being this like airy fairy thing. It's also this thing of like, hey, this isn't actually going to work. We need to choose something different here. And they're like, oh, okay, I can do that too. Like, let's go and explore what that looks like together. And yeah, I
And
just
in
think
that
it's
sense, the class really expanded it, because like we do this exercise of lunging, and the moment I knew what I'm looking for and directed that energy, the horse responded. So there was
yeah,
also this, like, I think we can all find the moments in life where we are that, like, so even let's say, I don't know, for 70% in your life, you're being passive or whatever and not taking charge, but those 20, 30% where, or like I took it to like, when I'm demanding of my kids, they know that I mean what I'm saying. So how can I use this in this realm? Like I just
yep,
found the areas in my life where I'm more that energy, and then used it to change the way that I ride, kind of thing.
yeah, yeah. And it's like that you become in this like slipstream is like one way I would describe it, when you are, and I'm sure it's the same for your kids, and when you're lunging the horse, you're doing that exercise of, you've got to know the direction you want them to go in. You need to know what speed you need them to travel at. You need to know how far away or how close you want them to you. Like, it's not like, oh, I'm just going to ask my horse to go around me in a circle. It's this whole string of communication that goes on between you and the horse. And then when you get it and the horse is like, I know what you want, and you're like, you know what I want. It's like you get into this like and all of the fight and the angst and the frustration goes away because you've found that space where clarity is the prevailing energy, and everyone's like, oh, it's clear for me, it's clear for you, let's go. Like that is so
And that's a moment when it's great that they're so big, because it gets so messy when you don't know what you're doing, that you're like, okay, I gotta
you can
get my
see
shit
it.
together pretty
It's
fast
obvious.
here.
Yeah. Otherwise I'm going to get trampled on, or this horse is going to like pull me over, or something's going to happen.
Totally.
Can you think of like, because I know you just spent, how long were you in? You were in El Lugar and then you went and came back, but all up it was like a few weeks or something like that.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
Three and a
Can
half
you
weeks.
think of any specific like times during those weeks that you rode a horse, which horse it was, or that's not even that relevant, but any particular like really just stories of change during your rides, or moments in those rides where things came up? And
Oh my goodness. There was a lot this time, but one of them definitely had to do with everything we talked about, because at a very early stage at the ride, I was messy with what I'm asking for. And the guy who was assisting us, Hugo, he was like, "What do you want your horse to do?" And I just lost it. I was crying most of that ride, but I think that was a huge facilitation for the rest of my life kind of thing. So also, I was just grateful how kind and relaxed the horse was with whatever I was going through. Because also, there's this thing of like, the more we talk about it, we're aware of like, all the crazy things we do with our head, the horses sense it. So it can be a bit unnerving, because you also don't want to impose all that on the horses. But also, they're super kind. Like, they don't have a point of view if you're whatever, losing your
best
shit that day.
rider,
They'll
or
just facilitate you, and
yeah, yeah.
so that was really cool. There was another ride that like they asked me if I'm okay with the horse they're giving me, and I knew that it was like a yes, no. It wasn't like a super clear yes, and we rode very shortly to the first gate, and he was already like starting to back up, and I could perceive already, if I stay on this horse, how interesting this ride is going to be. And in that second, the guy looked at me, and they don't even speak English. They're so wonderful. But he was like, you want my horse? And we switched, and I had the most phenomenal ride. And it was just like these 10 seconds of like, wow, if I wouldn't have chosen it or noticed it, or just, got really pissed at I mean, we could always still deal with the situation, but it just created so much ease to listen and see everything that's going on at that moment, kind of thing.
Yeah, and like it's like not personal. Like, even what you were saying before about when you were having the thing and Hugo asked you that question, the horse isn't like, who's this fucking idiot on my back? Like, what is their problem? Now I'm going to like run them into a tree because they're an idiot. And I like, maybe they'll do that sometimes as a clear facilitation on a thing, but they don't do it from this space of like, this is personal and you've pissed me off. So now I'm going to, like, in their world, it's like they're literally just living in the moment of like this communication between us and them. And it's such a cool example with the second story, because that horse is like, I'm in this mood today and I'm in this mood. So you either meet me where I am and we fucking sort this out together, or it's like, and like you said, you could have been like, I said yes, I'm gonna make this work and just make it this personal struggle for the next hour. Or you're like, actually, I have another choice here. I can just swap out my horse for, and every time I ride my horses out, I try to have that as my point of view. Like I rode out yesterday, and at the moment, because it's easy, I just my horses are like very in love with each other. So if I take one and leave the other one at home, they get a little upset. So, and they both need the exercise at the moment. So I saddle both of them, but I just ride one, and I just ride up the road here, and then I take another road, and there's a few trails. We're going for like 45 minutes. But there's a lot that can happen along the way. I'm on a busy road. There's trucks, there's motorbikes, there's cars, there's kangaroos. There's plastic bags on the road, which is one thing that Ollie is like, it's going to kill me for sure. So in my mind, I'm always like, there's so many choices here. Like, it's not like I've ridden out on my horses and therefore I must get to this point. We must go here. It must look like this. I'm like, hey, at any point, if this isn't working, we can just stop and I can get off and we can turn around and go home. We can have a break here and sit under a tree. It's like this thing where the more you try and determine the outcome, the more it just doesn't even happen that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So last conversation we had, which was like, we were talking about something and you were like, so like, how do I ride people's horses in Elgar? I thought it was really cool, this energy that came up where you were like, because there's a bunch of people that own horses. You can buy a horse. So even anyone listening to this, if you've ever desired to be owned by a Costa Sensei de Paso, which is the breed, the horse breed of Costa Rica, we've started a breeding program in Elgar as well. So we're going to have some amazing horses come along soon. You can go there and ride at any time. You don't need to stay at the resort, although I challenge you not to. But there is this riding facility just across the way. And a bunch of us bought horses and have them there. And they need exercise, right? I go a few times a year. So in between, I pay someone to ride my horse. And Maya's like, but maybe, and you know, I might be putting words in your mouth, but it seemed like you were like, well, maybe I could be exercising people's horses while I'm there. Like, how did you go? Like, what is in your world now with horses and like
Totally.
this different enthusiasm where you've gone from like, I'm just going to sit on this horse and like, we're going to go, and to now it's like, I see your world is so, there's so much more possibility there. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the last tiny story was that someone dropped their hat and I was closest to the hat. So, and then two people next to me who were way more experienced riders, they're like, I can do it. And I was like, I think I can do it. So, you know, I jump off the horse, I pick up the hat, the horse is waiting. I jump back on the horse and, you know, it's stuff that I just never did, but also didn't assume I can't kind of thing in that moment. So it was just like, wow, you know, just this sense of empowerment of when you move from, I don't know, I can't do anything, that I can try anything kind of thing. So it was just this like super, yeah, just sense of like that there's so much more to learn about horses, I would say. Like the other thing that I noticed is I could hear the conversations in a very different way, which again, it's like not judging any of our journey. Like I probably maybe tuned out to like 85% of the horse conversations the first time I was in Costa Rica to you know, being super involved and excited about everything they were talking about Costa Rica, even though, you know, I don't own a horse yet or blah, 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 blah. But it's like, there's so much more to learn and experience and enjoy. And it's just this beautiful thing of like really like I was telling someone about when I was crying on the horse and I said like, you know, because we work a lot about vulnerability and about change and about lowering our barriers to life. And I was joking that, you know, if nothing will break you, the horse is gonna break you, but also not joking, like just how much that opened in my life.
Yeah.
To
Like
start engaging
they are
again.
really like a window into like our very beings. Like they see and they just be with us to our very core. Like they don't, because they don't do barriers or any of that. There's nothing up that, like there's nothing in front. There's nothing that they put in between them and us. It's like they'll just dive right into the core of you and you're like, God damn you, no one's ever been in there before. Get out. And they're like, okay, but I'm just here being me. And you're like, okay. Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much. Because it's like you're allowing now, and you know, like you said, when you hear a lot more of it now, and another thing we say in Access is you hear it when you hear it. It's like the timing, and it's almost like the horses are getting much louder in the world. And maybe it's just for me and because I'm hearing them more too now or something, but it seems like globally they've got a louder and clearer voice now, and it's getting more loud and more clear. So, and I love, you know, because even the story about you stopping and getting off your horse to collect the hat and get back on, it's like you're willing to receive that invitation now, because the other thing they will always do is invite us to everything, like invite us to more of us, to know more about them, to explore more of whatever that horsemanship journey is for us. Like they're just an invitation. And I think what I took from what you were saying then is that you're really willing to receive that invitation from them now. And then it's like, and you take that next step, and then you see what happens from there, and you take that next step and see what happens from there. So thank you so much. This has been a very different and amazing conversation.
Yeah. So really, if you've never tried it before, or I mean, whether you're in an access class or not, but it's like when you get to those classes, and even if there's lots of experienced people, just go for it and have your own journey with the horses, and wherever it takes you.
Yeah. And that's, again, so much of life. Like, don't ever step into a room or a place where you're the newbie or you're the inexperienced one and let that stop you. Like, what if it was like, that was the actual invitation to be, you know, leaps and bounds into something in just the blink of an eye, that it didn't need to take as long as we've been told that it needs to take in order to.
Exactly. I'm like, what I'm doing now, or even, I think it was in April, I got there, and then Hugo said to the guys in Spanish, like, oh, she's experiencia. And I'm like, I am? Like, you know, I didn't even realize I moved to that category. And that's only with like leaping into a visit to Costa Rica, going home, you know, so it's like having these energetic tools and just this choice with horses, we can do something very different versus that linear thing that exists elsewhere.
Yeah. And if it's at all possible, have an experience or many experiences with horses in Costa Rica, but really El Lugar. Like, I really can't emphasize enough just how different this place is with everything. Like, and I know like we ride, there's probably maybe a dozen trails, a dozen paths we take, let's say. And like, I've probably ridden the same path there. Like, if I took one of those trails, that one, I've probably ridden it 20 times. Every time I go, I'm like, I have no idea where I'm going. Someone needs to tell me what way to turn here, because everything is completely different. I'm like, because there's the nature of it as well, where it's this like cacophony of nature and howler monkeys and toucans and armadillos and all of these animals, and then the plants and the cows and
the mist and the Pandora.
Yeah. And you can literally just go, you know, you're going for Christmas this year, right? Or close to Christmas. Like, take your family, you can stay in a casa there for a few nights or a week. If you're going from Australia, I would recommend a week, just because you're flying for like 2 days. And then you can ride, you can hike. There's so many things to do there. There's whitewater rafting, bird watching. Like, you can go offside and go and do tours of the different places. And for me, Costa Rica is like, it's like there's a level of magic that exists there that is so primal still. Like, it feels like a place that hasn't really been too touched by people. Like, there's people everywhere. There's a lot of people, but it's very different. It's a very, 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 very special place. So yeah, I think both Maya and I would like to invite you to explore and get wild in Costa Rica. Oh, anything else, my friend, before we wrap up this most amazing conversation?
Not that I can think of right now. I think I'm in that space of no thought where the horses live.
Yeah. Oh, it's the so go and find that space for yourself. And thank you so much for being on with me, Maya. This was such an epic conversation. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you again next week for more Let's Talk Horses.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.